What's up, everyone, and welcome back to some more Love, Money, Rock and Roll. In the previous recording session, we wrapped up Catherine's route, which was good. I liked it, very enjoyable. And then we jumped into Ellie's route, which for the most part, been really good, been having fun with it. But it easily came with one of the biggest, major shocking twists than any of the other routes have had, right? The biggest, shock moment. With Kagome's route, the big shock moment was, OMG, Kagome kidnapped Ellie. Oh wow, what's gonna happen next? With Himitsu's route, it was learning that, oh wow, Himitsu's dad's been spying on Nikolai all this time, and Himitsu might be involved in it. Oh wow, this is big. And then with Catherine's route, the big shock moment of oh wow, she was pregnant with his kid, had the miscarriage, and Himitsu was involved in that, and Himitsu was involved in getting Catherine sent back to the States. Big shocker. But then with this one, it's fucking 8 students get brutally gunned down in a warehouse. I'm only 3 or 4 hours deep into Ellie's route, man. I've barely scratched the surface here, and 8 students have gotten gunned down in a warehouse. That's pretty fucking extreme, right? I mentioned it before, but I'm pretty sure that's gotta be so far, that's one of the highest body counts we've had. I know in Himitsu's route, there's the shootout between the Russians and the Americans, right? Or the Japanese. There was the big shootout. I forget which sides were all involved in that. There was the big shootout, there was explosions and shit, but even still, I don't exactly know how many bodies they lost there, but I almost think this is still the highest body count we've had so far. This shit is nutty. This shit is nutty, and I've only really scratched the surface, right? We've only just begun to get into this. This is wild. So without further ado, let's just jump back into it, because I'm sure there's so much more to see. As soon as I came home, I went to bed with a book, another science fiction novel. I preferred hard science fiction, which dealt with the real problems of space, contact with other life forms, and the structure of the universe. Although I also enjoyed adventure novels where interstellar flights and aliens were a little more than stage decorations. Maybe because it wasn't that easy to find a really interesting book that went beyond anthropocentrism. I flipped through one page after another, and at some point realized I'd completely stopped following the story. My thoughts had gone elsewhere, or ceased to exist at all. I had neither the energy nor desire to focus on something specific. An image of an angry Kagome drifted before my eyes. Laughing Ellie with a guitar in her hands. Irina with her malevolent smirk. The stern face of Kobayashi Jin. Catherine and Himitsu. I didn't even notice when I fell asleep. Okay. Yeah, I don't know where we go from here, because there's the big murder, right? The big murder happens, but also he's still trying to practice with the band and getting good with the band, but then I don't know where we go from here. In my dream, there was an endless sapient ocean, its intellect as far removed from a human's as could be. Love, hatred, pride, power, money, revenge, family, primal instincts, none of that mattered to it. I couldn't understand what drove its existence. It was fundamentally impossible for me to comprehend what it thought about me. The alarm clock was an unpleasant surprise for me. I didn't even remember setting it. But it was time to get up and prepare for school. There were several reasons to attend class. First, I still had to talk to Kagome since I hadn't yesterday. Second, as paranoid as it might have sounded, the police could find my absence suspicious. Maybe Kagome would be more reasonable today. But she wasn't in the classroom, and before the start of the first class, the principal walked in and announced an all-school assembly. I've seen this somewhere before, Kyosuke said without a hint of sarcasm. A shiver ran down my spine. The feeling of some unclear danger seemed to have paralyzed my whole body. Nick, let's go? Yeah, sure, I said reluctantly and stood up. A strange podium was in the yard yet again. Kiyama-sensei was standing on it and meeting the students with a stern glare as they left the school building. Kyosuke and I stood in more or less the middle of the crowd. Michael joined us shortly, but Kagome was nowhere to be seen. Don't you think it's weird that Iwamura hasn't come today? Would you be quiet? I waved him away. The principal looked over the students one last time, closed his eyes, and sighed in an overly dramatic manner. As you all know, a terrible tragedy took place several days ago. 8 students of our school met a brutal death at the hands of an unknown murderer. I promised you that we would find the perpetrator, and we, with the help of the police of course, have. His speech sounded as dramatic as always, which seemed particularly inappropriate for the situation. It's hard for me to say this, but the perpetrator turned out to be one of the students of our school. He stopped, as if expecting a reaction, but everyone was listening quietly, looking at the old principal with silent attention. The reason for this monstrous deed was simple personal animosity. Come on, spit it out! Kyosuke grumbled next to me. Oh. Couldn't say a word though. I know what Kiyama was going to say. Iwamura Kagome, a senior student of our school. Right now she is in custody, and the police are doing their work. Kagome? So it was her after all. Or did she get framed? But I just couldn't believe it. It happens sometimes. You know something is going to happen, prepare yourself for it, but when it finally arrives you still don't expect it. I could accuse Kagome all I wanted, believe she was the murderer deep inside, and reinforce that opinion with the arguments of varying legitimacy. But I was completely unprepared for that to be the truth. I understand that it must be shocking for all of you. It was a great shock to me. Sure thing, Kyosuke scoffed. Well, Nick, what did I tell you? He looked at me with eyes full of anticipation. It's not a fucking quiz show. You're not getting a prize for the right answer. I hissed at him. And there isn't a right answer here. I can't believe Iwamura is physically capable of killing 8 people at once. Meanwhile, the principal continued. We couldn't imagine that such a monster was hiding among us. Among our children. We couldn't know. Kiyama-sensei's primary goal seemed to be protection of the school's image. I assure you, if we had ever had any suspicions. Japanese are generally good at hindsight. I felt a sharp lack of air. I need to go. I said to Kyosuke and carefully pushed my way through the crowd to the school gate. I felt better on the street with fewer people around and far enough away that the principal's rancid speech couldn't reach me. I took several deep breaths, leaning my head against the school gate. I told you. A familiar voice came from behind me. Don't scare me like that. I jumped up and spun around. Ellie stood next to me with a gloomy expression on her face. I'm not gloating, not at all, but I warned you from the very beginning. I hope you aren't about to say that Iwamura was accused because of you. Barely concealed notes of anger crept into my voice. We've been through that too. You accused my grandpa of everything. So it's not his fault now? I haven't told him anything else. But her tone lacked confidence. Glad to hear that. I gave her a sour smirk and looked at the gathering in the schoolyard. The principal kept talking, but I couldn't hear exactly what he was saying. To hell with him anyway. Nick, I'm serious. This is better for everyone. But not for Iwamura. Do you still think she's innocent? You don't trust the police? Yes, I didn't have much reason to trust them. There's no crime a capitalist would not commit for 300% profit. That's like a thing where we don't have Marxism-Leninism here. I was a bit surprised by the depth of Ellie's knowledge, but still couldn't help myself. It wasn't Marx who said that. What does that matter? She grew angry and stomped her foot, but quickly caught herself. Sorry, I understand it's not easy for you, and I shouldn't have said all that. Sorry. She blurted out, turned around, and ran back to school. At least now I knew it wasn't Ellie's fault. Although if Kobayashi Jun was involved in the arrest, he probably wouldn't tell his granddaughter. I calmed down a bit and went back to the yard. Just in time for the end of Kiyama-sensei's fiery speech. For a while the students lingered, exchanging confused glances. Almost all of them were quiet, only a few whispering to each other. I walked to Kyosuke and carefully put my hand on his shoulder. Have I missed much? You can watch the tape, he replied sarcastically. I wouldn't even be surprised if he actually invited a TV crew. But I couldn't get rid of the thought that Kagome had brought it upon herself. What was she doing at the crime scene? What if the 3 of us weren't alone there after all, and it wasn't just the ghosts of the night watching us? During lunch, Kyosuke, Michael, and I gathered in the cafeteria, not so much to eat as to discuss everything that had happened. As tired as I was of all this talking, I knew the conversation was unavoidable. I don't want to repeat myself, but I knew from the very first day that Iwamura was the murderer. Let's not go there, alright? What? Isn't it true? Tell him, Mike. No, it's not. Michael replied readily. You two are always like this. Kyosuke pouted and turned away. I still don't believe that Uemura is guilty. I don't know what evidence the police have, but it can't be true, because it just can't. Think about it. 8 people, at once, and she shoot them with a machine gun? Besides, all of them had to have ended up there that night somehow, against their will, probably. Nick, we aren't the ones you have to convince. I know that. I looked around. There are even fewer people in the cafeteria than the last time. It's interesting how an event that doesn't involve you directly can change your behavior. Were they really afraid that Kagome the maniac would jump at them with a knife right in the school? Still, for some reason, all of them decided that hunger was currently low on their list of priorities. The numerous empty tables were the best evidence for my theory. I still don't understand. Why are you protecting her like this? Because I couldn't find the answer. Not for Kyosuke, nor for myself. For the first time, I felt there was no way back. Whether Kagome was really guilty or not, framed or not, whether Kobayashi Jun was involved or not, none of it mattered since nothing could be changed. There's no way for me to help her. Because I really believe that she's not guilty, I said quietly. What? I can't hear you, Kyosuke exclaimed, leaned under the table and demonstratively put his hand against his ear. And immediately received a stinging slap on it, courtesy of me. Calm down already. Ouch, that hurts. In any case, we can't do anything now, Michael said calmly, as if reading my mind. He probably just wanted to support me in his own way, since I doubted he cared about Kagome's fate. Thank you. Michael just nodded lightly in response. No, I mean, she could have accomplices. Triads, for example. Kyosuke's imagination had gone so wild he started believing his own nonsense. Have you ever thought that Uemura might have some Chinese roots? If you look at her carefully. Kyosuke, enough. But by now he had stopped listening altogether. On the other hand, the Yakuza option. I threw a piece of broccoli precisely in the center of Kyosuke's ramen bowl, several drops of stock splashing onto his clothes. It took him several seconds to process what happened, but he suddenly snapped out of it, squinting slyly. Take that! Then he threw a chopstick at me. I dodged, and the chopstick hit the back of the girl sitting behind us. That girl turned out to be Saya-chan. Luckily, Himito wasn't around. Suzuhara-san, Kyosuke prattled. Saya turned around, looked at him angrily, but said nothing. Sorry. My chubby friend looked a little too scared. How did he even know her surname? Although I was more surprised that she had one. To me, she was always just Saya-chan. Do you two know each other? Us? No, but... Kyosuke was noticeably sweating. Don't tell me you've fallen for her. I laughed way louder than I should have. Quiet, you. Oh, I can't. Now the rest of the students were looking at us, not just Saya-chan. Look who's talking. I'm not judging you for Uemura. Hardly the same thing. I finally calmed down a bit. Are you sure about that? Sure, Saya-chan wasn't the prettiest girl in the world, and didn't have the nicest personality, but at least she wasn't suspected of committing a mass murder. I felt ashamed. You know what? Whatever. I crossed my arms over my chest and turned away. Sorry. I didn't know. I looked at Michael. He didn't seem to be interested in our conversation in the slightest. Yeah, and why did you think that I... Being at a loss for words wasn't like him either. Never mind, I said firmly and got back to the food. The school day ended pretty quickly. My classmates were unusually quiet, a dismal expression stuck on most of their faces. Most likely, not a single one of them even considered that Kagome could be innocent. It's not hard to imagine an outcast who you wouldn't even sit next to have done something terrible. Nobody would even be surprised. For many, having some sort of physical or mental defect, even just being shy or lacking social skills, is an aggravating circumstance in and of itself. What must it be like to feel that the entire world is against you? On my way home, I was desperately trying not to look at the people on the street. I felt like they were all sneering down at me, at the very least, maybe even prepared to attack me. What if deep inside everyone thought I was an outcast too? How was I fundamentally any different from Kagome? By having a couple of friends and knowing Ellie, our personalities were probably pretty similar from the outside. We both suffered at the hands of Kobayashi Corporation. We both had a very vague idea of our prospects for the future. We both were unhappy with our lives. When I thought about how I could have warned her yesterday but hadn't, I felt sick. Oh, yeah. Could have done that, right. I forgot that was one of the choices. Yeah. Instead, I chose to go to band practice, right? Well, no, I had the fates decide, right? I did the coin flip. I remember that one, and I was like, you know what? Nah. Yeah. Today, my old house seemed to be looking down on me, too. If my parents had been alive, they would have renovated it by now, or at least kept the yard clean. Couldn't say I didn't care about it, but worrying about the inner and outer appearance of my home was somewhere on the bottom of my list of priorities. When I opened the door, I immediately felt something was wrong, but I had nowhere to retreat to. Indeed, Irina was sitting in the kitchen, idly flipping through the pages of a newspaper. "Welcome. Sorry for coming in without an invitation," I said, paying no attention to her, walked to the fridge. "Good to see you, Nikolai. This is my house, actually." Of course, I should have been more careful around her, but these regular visits were starting to get on my nerves. "I hope you've had enough time to think about our offer." "I haven't, to be honest." "Oh, and what's been keeping you so busy? Music?" She smiled, but her eyes followed me with the attention of a predator. "That too, and the murders at my school. Do you know anything about that?" I asked randomly, more to distract her from attacking me. "Do I know anything about the murders?" she repeated thoughtfully, as if trying to grasp the meaning of what I just said. "It seems the police just recently detained the suspect." "Exactly. Yumura Kagome. We were talking about her last time." "And I think the two of you are in the same class." "Stop playing dumb." The fake expression on Irina's face disappeared at once, giving place to cold concentration. "Well, yes, we framed her." "But why?" Out of surprise, I started back and bumped into the fridge. Boxes on top of it shook but didn't fall. "She was sticking her nose everywhere and had become a nuisance to us." "How could a simple Japanese schoolgirl become a nuisance to the almighty KGB?" I exclaimed. "Be quiet, the walls have ears." "I thought they were yours." In another situation, Irina might have appreciated the joke, but today she apparently wasn't in the mood. "I would have agreed with you under different circumstances, but Yomura's father is hardly uninvolved in this whole affair. And if she hadn't bothered certain important people, she'd be enjoying her freedom right now." "Then why not just kill her?" "Indeed," she replied as if returning the question to me. "In any case, this will be a good lesson for you. 8 people. Don't you think that's too many for a lesson? What did they do?" "Collateral damage." "Right. Why didn't I guess that right away?" "Alright, Nikolai, I'm not in the mood to chat with you." Weirdly enough, Irina rarely spoke about herself. It was usually all we and us. "Then why are you here?" Still can figure out how to address her. "I think I told you last time. It's good you've grown close with Kobayashi Jun's granddaughter. Is your relationship developing?" She relaxed her shoulders, leaned back, fixed her hair, and smiled. It was amazing how, in a fraction of a second, this woman could turn from KGB Major Irina Mostavaya to the silly employee of the French embassy, Irine Dupont, appreciator of good drinks and handsome boys. "We aren't in a relationship. It's not my opinion, it's a fact," I replied reluctantly. "It's very strange to play in a band together and have no relationship at all." "You sure know a lot." "We know plenty, but not enough, and you'll help us fix that." "How?" For a while, Irina kept looking at me like I'd said something unbelievably stupid. "We've been trying to infiltrate Kobayashi Jun's inner circle for some time now, but he's very cautious. And that's where you take the stage. In a couple days, there'll be a charity ball at Kobayashi's estate, and I need you to be there." "Is it so difficult to get an invitation for a charity ball? Just make a donation." To be honest, I knew nothing about that sort of thing. I was making an assumption based on books and movies I'd seen. "We aren't in the US or even Europe. Every guest's background is checked through by the corporation's security service." "And of course, they'll let me in." I smirked sarcastically. "They will, if you come as the beau of the host's granddaughter." "Married me over my head, huh?" "I'm glad you're having fun. Positivity increases the chance of success. Just don't go too far." "Let's say I get into the estate. What next?" "Next, well..." She went through her bag, took out a small device, carefully handed it over to me. It looked like a miniature camera. "You don't need to know the details, but we have reliable intel that Kobayashi Jun recently made a secret deal with the Americans. You should have some papers concerning this deal in his office. You're tasked to find and carefully photograph them." Again, even if I somehow managed to sneak into his office, How would I know what exactly I'm supposed to look for? He could have a mountain of documents in there. Irina scoffed and took a square instant photo out of her bag, depicting a paper sheet with a logo of Earth surrounded by several circles. There clearly used to be text under the logo, but it was painted over with a black marker. Look for this logo. What does it mean? It means that you know more than enough to complete the mission. Except, after the photo, she took out a sheet with the layout of the Kobayashi estate. It was clearly made by hand, but extremely carefully. You need to get into this room. She circled the right place with the red marker. What happens if I fail? My voice sounded like it belonged to someone else. Cold and distant. Don't you already know? I mean, what if I can't find the documents? Irina once again returned to the image of perfect innocence. Then let's hope that your and Kobayashi Ellie-san's love ends up being more than juvenile infatuation. The words made me feel disgusted. Even a strange sour taste appeared in my mouth. So I'm just expendable to you. Nikolai, what are you saying? And my death would be written off as collateral damage? You know, I'm tired of having these soul-searching conversations with you and trying to convince you of the importance of what we're doing. I wish I could know what we're doing exactly, I remarked, but Irina continued without paying attention to it. You don't have much choice. You either help us and we help you. Did you give the same offer to Iwamura? Did she reject it? You aren't her, and you should be grateful for that. So, you either help us, or you're left alone with your problems. I haven't seen much help from you so far. If you manage this, we'll be able to bring you to the USSR. Unless you have something that's keeping you here. Irina suddenly stood up in one quick motion, grabbed the photo from the table, and put it in her bag. You understand. Until next time. I was left with the plan of Kobayashi's estate. Interesting. The rest of the day was spent in pointless rumination. It wasn't even about trusting Irina and her promise or not, but about whether I wanted to return to my homeland. Was anything keeping me in Japan? Our relationship with Himitsu was completely ruined, and worse than that, deep inside I believed it was for the better, yes. Yes, there was a prospect of a mind-blowing music career, but how real was that fantasy? Ellie would graduate in half a year, and what would happen to Zed Fields? She could repeat all she wanted, that she wished to make her own choices, but not everything in a teenager's life bends to their will. Directly or indirectly, our choices are defined by our parents and loved ones. That influence is even more important in Japan. And I'd imagine even more so in the Kobayashi family. I was walking from one room to another when I suddenly noticed the smell. It's interesting how each house has its own palette of aromas incomparable to anything. The smell of dust, wood, paper turned yellow, of old clothes, moth-eaten and languishing in a wardrobe, and the odor of soap that seems to be the same everywhere, yet smells differently in each house. But our specific smell had almost disappeared in the year and a half that had passed since my parents' death. Soon enough, there wouldn't be anything left in this house but stench, dampness, and mold. So I had to decide who I was afraid of more, the KGB or Kobayashi Corporation. Despite all the power the corporation possessed, it hadn't manifested itself in any way so far. There was a threat to be found in Kobayashi Jun's warning, Kagemura's frightening facial expressions, and Ichinose words. Meanwhile, Irina regularly visited me in person, was very talkative, and presented a vivid picture of what would happen if I refused to work with her. After what they did to Ellie's friends. And that thought suddenly came to mind. What if the KGB was just trying to profit off the murders? There was really no way to know if Kagome had been framed or not, especially after the police detained her. Given that the Japanese justice system isn't known for its acquittals, I didn't have much chance of seeing Kagome outside the walls of a prison. But thinking about it, I would never refuse to accompany Ellie to the ball even without Irina forcing me to do it. Just the thought of us dancing in the middle of a bright ballroom made shivers run down my skin. Was I good enough to be her beau? Who fucking cares? I wouldn't refuse the opportunity if I got it. Hell yeah, my man. And then I could go make things up as I go. I could just lie and say I'd looked for the documents and didn't find any. I didn't want to have any way to tell whether I was telling the truth or not, right? Any decision is better than none. And with that thought, I went to sleep. Who fucking cares? If I got the choice, I'm taking it. I respect homie's brutal honesty there.